This is video 2 of 2 covering the Chapter 21 class notes. In this video, we'll cover pages 3 to 6, and we will begin with the standard costing. So standard costing, important definition, these are just preset estimates of cost for delivering a product or service under normal, not perfect conditions. So you get standard cost, standard quantities. A standard cost is the preset cost. A standard quantity is the preset quantity for delivering a product or service under normal conditions. A cost variance will be the difference between the actual and the standard cost. So we're going to do direct material and direct labor variances in particular in this chapter. A price variance is the difference arising because of the difference between the actual and standard price. Quantity variance is the difference arising due to the difference in the actual and standard quantity. Note that we take the difference in price and multiply it by actual quantity because at the moment we buy materials, we do not know how they will be used, the difference in their use. So we just multiply by the actual quantity and assume that they will be used as they're supposed to be. When I've used them, I know the difference in what I expected to use, what I actually used. At that point, I do multiply by the standard price because I do know what standard price should be. I know that when I buy it. And I know how well I've actually achieved that, and I've already recorded materials, particularly at standard price in raw materials. So these are the formulas for price and quantity variance. You will be given these versions of the formulas on the exam. We're going to first start by doing direct material variances. You will also want to know how to do the journal entries. You will do 2 separate journal entries for direct materials. You'll only do 1 for direct labor. In direct materials, though, you'll have 2 3-line journal entries. The first being when you buy the materials, the second when you use them. So when I buy them, I've increased raw materials. I should debit raw materials. At the point that I buy them, I do not know how well I'll use them. Quantity refers to the quantity used, not the quantity purchased. So I assume that I'll use them all the way that they're supposed to be. I take actual quantity, multiply by the standard price to record it at the one standard that I do know, which is price at this moment. I also have an accounts payable typically, or I could pay in cash. But assuming that I buy on credit, I would record the actual amount owed, actual quantity times actual price. And then somewhere between these two, that would be a credit to increase that. I would record my price variance, the difference between what I actually paid and what I thought I was going to pay per unit. That's my price variance, difference in price. If it's unfavorable, I debit, favorable, I credit. Then I record it. I make another journal entry when I use the materials. Basically, the materials are moved to work in process, but they are moved at their standard quantity and standard price. At the moment that I use them in process, I have expectations both about how much I should have used, the quantity, so standard quantity, and the standard price, which kind of just flows from raw materials. So work in process is always at full standard. I remove from raw materials with a credit by doing the opposite of what I did when I recorded it initially. I would just credit standard price times actual quantity instead of debiting to move it out, just reverse the earlier entry. And then I would record the quantity variance somewhere in between these two, debiting if unfavorable, crediting if favorable. Basically, it's just the difference between what I thought I was going to use and what I actually ended up using. So here's an example. The first thing I do is get these four terms: actual price, actual quantity, standard price, standard quantity. I'm doing this for direct materials. Note that I want anytime that I'm doing direct materials or direct labor, I want to get prices, whether actual or standard, in dollars per whatever the unit is. In this one, it's pounds, so dollars per pound. I want quantities and the total pounds necessary to build or to make production. In this case, production was 3,500 units. I want the total pounds necessary to make 3,500 units. So, I use 1,800 pounds of direct materials. Use means actual. That would be actual quantity. It costs $21 per pound. That would be actual price. I should have used a half a pound of titanium per unit. So that should have suggest standard. I want the total pounds necessary to make 3,500 units. There's my standard price of $20 per pound. First, I'm going to get my price variance. So actual price my actual price is greater than what I expected by a dollar. So I paid more per unit than what I expected. That's unfavorable. 21 minus 20 is a dollar times the actual quantity 1,800 unfavorable. Then for quantity, the difference in quantity so I actually used more than expected. So it's unfavorable. 1,800 minus 1,750 is 50 pounds times my standard price. $1,000 unfavorable. So together, add them both up. They're both unfavorable. 2,800 unfavorable, or actual price times actual quantity. 3,700 in actual cost. 20 times 1,750. 35,000 my standard cost. So my actual cost is greater than my standard cost. Signals unfavorable. 2,800 unfavorable. So same answer either way. I would need to debit both of these in the journal entry. So initially, raw materials, record that at the standard price of 20 times the actual quantity of 1,800 pounds. Then I have my actual price and actual quantity, 37,800. To get this to balance, I need a 1,800 debit, which is consistent with having a unfavorable price variance. Then I use it, work in process, debit by the standard amount, which is 35,000. Remove raw materials at the amount it was initially recorded, 36,000. I clearly need a $1,000 debit consistent with an unfavorable quantity variance. Those journal entries balance. Now with direct labor variance, I need 4-line journal entries, or 1 4-line journal entry. I will start with the standard work in process, standard price times standard quantity, debit that, add it to work in process, add standard. I will credit at the very end wages payable or possibly cash if I paid in cash, but typically wages payable for the actual amount owed, actual price, and actual quantity. So start with standard, end with actual. In between, I will have the two variances, and their order will depend on what's debited, what's credited. So here, I will want my prices in dollars per direct labor hour. I will want my quantities in total direct labor hours to make however many units. So it starts off by saying that I used 1,700 direct labor hours. That means that is my actual quantity. At a cost of $33 per unit. That's actual price. I should have, that means it's standard. Use 1750, that would be standard quantity. That's total direct labor hours. Standard cost of labor, so standard price 32 per direct labor hour. So my price variance, actual price of 33 is more than my standard price of 32, so that's unfavorable. 33 minus 32 is $1 times the actual quantity. Then quantity, actual quantity of 1,700 direct labor hours versus standard quantity of $1,750. So I used less than expected, which is favorable. 50 direct labor hours times standard price. So that would be favorable. Put those together. I had 1,700 unfavorable minus 1,600 favorable. That is a $100 unfavorable variance. To double check that, I could also look at actual cost minus standard cost. My actual cost, so 33 times 1,700. Standard cost 32 times 1,750. My actual cost is slightly more than my standard cost, so that would be unfavorable. 56,100 minus $56,100 unfavorable. So the favorable, I would credit. This unfavorable one, I would debit. I need to start this journal entry with a debit to work in process for the full standard, which was 56,000. I need to credit wages payable for the actual cost, which was 56,100. I need to debit direct labor price variance, which came out to 1,700. I need to credit direct labor quantity variance, which is 1,600 favorable. Those journal entries also balance out, coming out to 57.7 debit, 57.7 credit. Okay, that is the end of my coverage of the chapters 21 class notes. If you have any questions or concerns about those journal entries or those calculations for the variances, please let me know.